Ladies and gentlemen, there was a moment late at night, heart aching, tears flowing when I asked a question so many around the world are asking right now: why isn't Allah helping Palestine? That question, it comes from a place of pain. It comes from watching the unbearable, the bombs, the bodies, the children, the silence. And if you've asked that question, my dear friends, you are not alone. But let me tell you what I learned. At first, I was angry, confused. I wanted to scream to the heavens, "Where are you, God?" I looked for lightning bolts. I looked for miracles. I looked for something to shake the world awake. And then I understood Allah is not absent. He is waiting. He is waiting for us. You see, we often ask why God isn't doing something, when in reality, God is asking why we aren't despair. Allah gave us hands not to fold in despair, but to raise in prayer and in protest. He gave us voices not to whisper in fear, but to shout for justice. He gave us hearts not just to feel sorrow, but to move us into action. This is not divine neglect. This is divine invitation. An invitation to stand, an invitation to unite, an invitation to be the help we've been waiting for. Because Allah does not drop peace from the sky, He plants it in our souls and expects us to grow it. When you donate, when you march, when you speak truth to power, when you teach your children about dignity, when you amplify the silence that is Allah helping Palestine through you. So the next time you ask, why isn't God helping? Ask yourself, how am I helping? And know this, every dollar you give, every post you share, every injustice you challenge, every prayer you whisper, it matters.
Faith is often strongest when life feels certain, when our families are safe, our homes are whole, and the world seems to make some kind of sense. But when tragedy strikes, when injustice unfolds on our screens in real time, when we see suffering that seems to go unpunished and cries that go unanswered, our faith is tested in ways that feel almost unbearable. We begin to ask the most human question of all: why would God allow this? Where is Allah in all this pain? And in the case of Palestine, where families are buried beneath rubble, where children grow up under siege, where hope flickers like a candle in the wind, we can feel spiritually abandoned. That question, why isn't Allah helping Palestine, is not a betrayal of faith. It's an expression of it. It means you believe God is powerful, that God is merciful, that God should intervene. And that is the beginning of a deeper understanding, not the end of it. Throughout history, prophets, saints, and ordinary believers have asked the same thing. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself wept, was injured, and endured unspeakable loss. And even he questioned, when will the help of Allah come? The answer that came was not soon. It was in Nasrullahi Karib. The help of Allah is near. Near doesn't always mean now, but it does mean certain. Suffering, as hard as it is to accept, is part of this world. Not because God is cruel, but because this world was never meant to be paradise. If it were perfect, there'd be no need for faith. If justice were automatic, there'd be no need for struggle. But faith lives in the struggle. It lives in that tension between heartbreak and hope. And in that space, something extraordinary can happen. We begin to shift from asking why God isn't helping to realizing that God is helping, but not in the ways we expect. Not always through lightning from the sky or angels with wings, but through people who choose to stand for truth when it costs them everything. Through the mother who teaches her child to read under occupation. Through the doctor who treats the wounded in a tent hospital with no medicine. Through the teenager who live streams the truth, risking their life for a story to be heard. Through every person around the world who cries out, not just in prayer, but in protest. Allah does not forget, but sometimes we do. We forget that free will is real, that oppression is human-made, that injustice happens because human beings choose to do evil or choose to stay silent while evil happens. And that means our response matters more than ever. God is not absent. God is not blind. But God gave us agency, and with that comes responsibility. This is where real faith begins, when we trust that Allah's plan is greater than what we can see, but we also live like we are part of that plan. We give, we speak, we resist, and we remember. Because the help of Allah doesn't just arrive, it flows through those who carry His light into dark places. And so, faith in times of suffering isn't about passive waiting. It's about active belief. It's about living like your actions matter because they do. It's about realizing that you may not stop every bomb, but you can stop your own silence. You may not reach Gaza with your hands, but you can reach it with your voice, your money, your advocacy, your dua. That is faith, and that is how help comes. There is a question that often lingers quietly in the background during times of war, oppression, and deep injustice. If God is all powerful, why doesn't He stop this? Why doesn't He intervene directly, snap His fingers, and remove the tyrants, end the suffering, and restore peace? To even begin answering that question, we must understand one of the most fundamental gifts and tests God has given humanity: free will. Free will is a divine trust. It means we are not robots. We are not pre-programmed to choose good or evil. We are given the power and the responsibility to choose. And with that power comes consequences, beautiful and devastating. When we look at what's happening in Palestine, we are not witnessing divine abandonment. We are witnessing the abuse of human free will. We are watching what happens when power is used not to protect, but to oppress, when technology is used not to heal, but to destroy, when silence is chosen over speaking up. God does not will evil. God allows human beings the space to reveal who they are through their choices. That's the deal. That's the test. That is how both saints and tyrants are born, through choice. And while it may seem unbearable to witness, this freedom is what makes acts of mercy, sacrifice, and resistance so meaningful. A person who chooses to risk their life to save another is a reflection of divine mercy. A leader who chooses to oppress others, to bomb homes and cut off aid, is reflecting something very different, but it's still a choice. We can't ask for a world where love is real, where compassion is voluntary, and then also demand that God control people like puppets. If someone is free to love, they are also free to hate. If someone is free to build, they are also free to destroy. It is through this tension that the human soul is revealed, and God is not absent from this process. He is the one who watches, who records, who sees what the eye cannot. Justice delayed is not justice denied. But while divine justice may take time, human justice cannot afford delay. That's why the responsibility falls on us. What we do with our free will in the face of injustice defines us. It is not enough to shake our heads in sadness. That's not what free will was given for. We were meant to use our freedom to challenge oppression, to support the oppressed, and to create systems that reflect divine values: mercy, dignity, equity, truth. Look at the world today. Some people use their freedom to bomb refugee camps. Others use their freedom to give their last dollar to a relief fund. Some use their power to erase voices. Others use their platform to amplify the cries of the unheard. That's free will. That's what shapes the world. That's what shapes destiny. And when we say, "Why isn't Allah helping?" we must remember that Allah has already equipped us with the tools to help. He gave us the ability to organize, to speak, to pray, to donate, to resist, to educate. He gave us conscience, He gave us capacity, and He gave us time. What we do with that time, that freedom, is the difference between being a witness and being a participant in the healing of the world. The power of free will is not a weakness in the divine plan.
It is the essence of it. It is through our choices that we reflect what we believe, who we are, and whose side we're truly on. In the end, history and heaven will both ask us, "What did you do with your freedom when you saw injustice?"
And we will have to answer not with words, but with deeds. Sometimes we wait for signs from the heavens, light breaking through the clouds, a miracle descending upon the earth, an intervention so divine it erases suffering in a moment.
But more often than not, divine help doesn't come in the form of supernatural displays. It comes in quieter, more powerful ways. It comes through people, through you, through me, through hearts moved by compassion and hands moved by action. God does not drop change from the sky. He brings it through those who choose to be agents of that change. That is how divine help works. It comes through us. We cry, "Where is Allah's help?" But maybe the better question is, who is willing to be that help? When we look back through history, God didn't simply end injustice with a wave. He raised people, Moses standing before Pharaoh, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, facing persecution in Mecca, Maryam, peace be upon her, enduring hardship with unwavering faith. The miracle wasn't just in what happened to them. The miracle was in who they became, and through them, help came. Through them, change happened. In today's world, we are being given the same opportunity. What's happening in Palestine is not just a test for those living under bombardment. It is a test for the rest of us. Will we be the vessels through which compassion flows, or will we be passive spectators of suffering, waiting for someone else to act? When you donate, you are Allah's help. When you raise your voice against injustice, you are Allah's help. When you educate others, challenge false narratives, and push for policy change, you are Allah's help. The idea that divine help is something distant, something apart from us, is a misunderstanding. In reality, divine help is near, but it's waiting for us to say yes, to rise, to resist, to serve. This doesn't mean that God needs us to act in order to change the world. He is capable of anything, but in His wisdom, He has chosen to involve us in the story. He honors us by allowing us to be His instruments, to carry a piece of His mercy into a hurting world. That's not a burden, that's a privilege. And yes, it can feel overwhelming. What can one person do in the face of tanks, drones, propaganda, and powerful interests? But remember, even a single act can carry the weight of eternity. A single voice can echo across generations. A single prayer, spoken with sincerity, can shift realities in ways we may never see with our eyes, but will surely be written in the unseen. We are not powerless. We are powerful beyond measure, not because of who we are alone, but because of what we carry. We carry the ability to reflect divine attributes: mercy, justice, patience, courage. And when we act from that place, we become conduits for divine intervention. Look around you.
Look at the people who are organizing medical convoys. Look at the artists using their creativity to humanize victims. Look at the students staging peaceful protests on campuses around the world. That is Allah's help. That is what it looks like when hearts awaken and hands follow. That is what it means to be a miracle in motion. So when you feel despair, remember, God has not abandoned anyone. He is calling on everyone. He is whispering to your soul, "Will you be my answer?" And the moment you say yes through action, through prayer, through showing up, you become a part of a divine plan that is always unfolding, always working, even when we don't see the end. We may not end the oppression tomorrow, but we can be part of the light that refuses to go out today, and that is how Allah helps Palestine. Through us, pain has a way of stopping time. When we are faced with images of war, children pulled from rubble, mothers holding lifeless bodies, and families displaced from their homes, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, paralyzed by the sheer weight of it all. The heartbreak is real. It sits in our chests, it stings in our eyes, and sometimes it leaves us speechless. But in the middle of that sorrow, something profound happens. Pain begins to turn into purpose. This transformation isn't automatic. At first, pain may only feel like grief, anger, or helplessness. But pain, when allowed to breathe and when held with intention, becomes a powerful motivator. It becomes a call to action. It stirs something inside us that says, "I cannot ignore this." And that moment, when your heart breaks and then demands to do something, that is when pain becomes purpose. What's happening in Palestine has awakened the conscience of millions around the world. It has pushed people who were previously silent to start speaking. It has sparked boycotts, mobilized protests, opened eyes, and built bridges across cultures, faiths, and nations. That's purpose. That's impact. That's what happens when people refuse to let pain be the end of the story. For many, this transformation begins with education. They learn the history, they understand the systemic injustices, they see through propaganda, and in doing so, they find their voice. That's not a small thing, that's a beginning, because awareness is not passive. It plants seeds. Once you know, you cannot unknow. Once you see, you cannot unsee. And that uncomfortable awakening, that is the first step toward meaningful change. From that place of awareness, people begin to act. Maybe it's a student starting a Palestine solidarity group on their campus. Maybe it's an artist creating work that honors the victims and tells the truth. Maybe it's a parent teaching their children about empathy and justice. These actions may seem small, but collectively, they shift the energy of the world. They keep the issue alive in hearts, in conversations, in policies. And they give the oppressed something just as sacred as food or shelter. They give them dignity. Turning pain into purpose doesn't mean ignoring the sadness or rushing past the grief. It means honoring it by doing something with it. It means allowing yourself to feel the weight of another's suffering and then letting that feeling guide your choices. It means saying, "This is not okay, and I will not be okay with doing nothing." Purpose gives the pain direction. It channels your anger into advocacy, your sadness into solidarity, and your heartbreak into healing. You begin to realize that while you may not be able to end a war, you can change minds, you can uplift stories, you can inspire action, you can make sure that those suffering are not forgotten. And this transformation doesn't just change the world, it changes you, it strengthens your faith, it deepens your compassion. It makes you more aware, more grateful, more connected. That is the sacred alchemy of purpose. It refines you, It teaches you that your heart was not just made to beat, it was made to feel and then move. The most powerful people in the world are not those with money or weapons. They are the ones who have turned their pain into purpose. They are the ones who refuse to let despair win. They are the ones who keep going even when it's hard because they know their actions matter. So if you're grieving for Palestine, good, that means your heart is alive. But don't let your grief end there. Let it be the beginning. Let it lead you to purpose. Let it lead you to something greater than pain, to love in action, to hope in motion, to justice with hands and feet. That's where healing begins, for them and for us. Hope can feel like a fragile thing in times of devastation. When bombs fall, when families are torn apart, when generations live under occupation and fear, hope feels like a whisper in a storm. But in truth, hope is not weakness. Hope is resistance. Hope is power. Hope is the refusal to accept that injustice is final. And when that hope is shared, when people unite in it, speak it, act on it, it becomes an unstoppable force for healing and change. The people of Palestine continue to hope, not because they are naive, but because they are resilient. That hope shows up in the child still going to school amid ruins. It shows up in the father rebuilding his home again and again. It shows up in the mother who still sings lullabies, even when the world seems to have forgotten them. This hope is not passive. It is active. It is the daily decision to live, to love, and to resist despair. And it is contagious. Around the world, millions of people are catching that same flame. They are recognizing that what happens in one part of the world affects us all. That injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And they are coming together, students, faith leaders, journalists, artists, teachers, parents. They are uniting not just in sorrow, but in solidarity. That unity is a form of healing. It takes our individual grief and turns it into collective strength. Healing does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending everything is okay. It means standing together and saying, we will not let this pain be in vain. It means creating a world where this suffering is not repeated. That healing starts with empathy, the kind that doesn't ask for someone to look like us or pray like us before we care. True empathy is recognizing the humanity in every face, even when their struggle feels distant. It's saying, your pain is my pain, your freedom is tied to mine. Unity has a force that systems of oppression cannot match. It cuts through propaganda, it dismantles lies, it changes culture, it challenges silence. Unity built on justice and compassion becomes a movement. And a movement, once awakened, is hard to silence. We've seen this throughout history. When people of conscience come together across nations, across faiths, across generations, they become a voice too loud to ignore. This is how we turn despair into momentum. When people come together to demand change, to uplift truth, to build new narratives, they create space for healing to happen. This healing isn't just for Palestine. It's for all of us, because when we act from unity, we are reminded of our shared humanity. We are reminded that no one is truly free until everyone is free. Hope and unity are not sentimental ideas. They are strategic, they are spiritual, and they are essential. They are how movements are born. They are how injustice is confronted. They are how we turn pain into purpose and purpose into progress. So when you feel helpless, remember that your voice, joined with others, becomes a roar. Your small action, multiplied by millions, becomes transformation. Your single act of kindness, courage, or solidarity is a thread in a much larger tapestry, one that tells the story of a world that refused to give up. We are not powerless. We are powerful together. That is the secret. That is the key. Healing doesn't begin when the war ends. It begins when hearts come together. And through that unity, through that collective hope, we build the kind of world that makes peace possible, not just in Palestine, but everywhere.